This is a joint presentation of Backyard to Table and Morton Memorial Library in Rhinecliff. And we'd like to acknowledge the traditional inhabitants of this land, the people of the Lenni Lenape and the Mohican. Our mission at Backyard to Table is to cajole, prod, and otherwise teach people how to grow their own food.
A quick introduction to Hannah. Hannah is an herbalist, writer, botanist, maker, and general plant enthusiast, living on a sheep farm on the Chicomico Creek in Pine Plains, which was traditional Mohican lands. She traveled a lot as a child, living mostly in Northern Europe, and read The Secret Garden over and over. She learned to garden for real while at Warren Wilson College in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, where she fell in love with the forest and began studying plants and herbal medicine. She went on to intern with United Plant Savers and learned to blend Western and traditional Chinese herbalism and energetic approaches while studying with Patricia Kiritsi Howell at the Botanologos School of Herbal Studies in Georgia. She also apprenticed with Seven Song in Ithaca, with Corey Pine at the Blue Ridge School of Holistic Medicine in Asheville, and with Lorna Moni Brodek of Herbalista in Atlanta. Now settled in the Hudson Valley and is exploring a bioregional mindset. Her interests in art, plants, writing, and people informs the mission of Foliage Botanics, to find and meet with others at the confluence of ecology and social justice. So Hannah, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you for that introduction. I'm very happy to be here. So my name is Hannah. I use she, her pronouns. And I do live in Pine Plains, New York, and I live on this beautiful piece of land here, sort of in what was once the town called Chicomico, but along the Chicomico Creek. And my work is very much influenced by this bioregional perspective, as Margot said, which is very place-based, but it's also very seasonal based. So that really sort of forms the foundation of my plant perspective. I make medicine and I teach, but also my health perspective. So that's sort of a little bit of a jumping off point for how I want to talk about some, herbal care for the new year, which is a bit of a vague name, but I wanted to talk about just how to kind of harness this particular season, winter, and harness it to sort of form a good foundational health for leading in to the rest of the year. So I guess the seasonal perspective, thinking from that lens and talking about winter, winter is really this season for engaging with deep rest. And I feel like that's an important thing that I want to assert, that it's a great thing to be doing. So I'm going to share some different tools and herbs in brief, because we don't have a super long time to talk about all the different ways that I like to use herbal medicine during this season, but hopefully we'll get like a little smattering of different things that are also very accessible and easy to come by and easy to implement into your day-to-day lives too, because I don't know everyone's herbal background. So also if I say anything that, you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, there are no silly questions. So please put that in the chat box or ask it at the end, because I'm going to leave some space for answering questions at the end. But hopefully I'm going to be talking about some things that don't feel too daunting. Also, especially because I feel like sometimes self-care can be, there's like a lot of pressure to do self-care. I loved what people were saying about their favorite self-care routines. They all sounded like really nourishing, but also very simple, like things you can fit into your daily routine, as opposed to, some sort of like luxurious, you have to go to the spa or you have to go on like a trip to get self-care. Self-care can totally be like walking your chickens or knitting with your cats, I think is what someone else said. So I really appreciated those pieces. So winter is this time of deep rest, and it kind of, when you set it up against the rest of the seasons, the other seasons, many of the other seasons, spring and summer specifically, are these seasons of a lot of outward energetic output. And that really is reflected in what's going on, outside of our bodies, in nature, with the land, with the plants, with the animals. And that's kind of what I mean about like taking our cues for how to heal and how to think about our own personal energies by looking at what's going on outside. So, in the summertime, there's lots of flowers blooming, or spring and summer, flowers blooming, animals are mating, and seeds are happening, and fruit is being made. So there's just lots of production and growth and energy and output. And in the human world, we see that too. It's like the days are longer, we're gardening, we're, taking full benefit of all that extra light. And what else are we doing? Being very social, more social in the summertime, in normal years, but even, in this kind of year. Then there's this really natural fall in the fall, like this curve backwards inward, where, we want to start replenishing and restoring that inner energy that we're using to do all that output in those other months, where we don't have so much time or need really to kind of close in and rest and rejuvenate. And we definitely live in a culture where we're sort of expected to keep up at that pace all the time, and not sort of reflect this more seasonal shifting. But I feel very strongly about, leaning into those seasonal shifts. So winter is this great time for restoring and replenishing these energy wells that we have. And it's the element that I associate with winter. It's specifically rooted in traditional Chinese medicine, but I think in many different herbal perspectives see winter as the water element time. And I think, again, just looking at the land and seeing how, in the summertime, the land gets really dry and, all this energy is sapped out. The wintertime, everything's dormant and fallow, everything gets a rest. And the waterways really replenish. We get all this rain and snow. And here, my apothecary where I am, it's dark right now, but it looks right out over the Chicomico Creek. I mean, the road comes first, but it's really like full right now. It was so low this summer, and now it's really churning, and you just feel this sense that the land is replenishing itself so that it can start up again, and all the plants can come back, and vibrancy can happen. So we're really wanting to do that with ourselves too. So so that's the basis of what I'm going to talk to you about, some of these different herbs. First and foremost, thinking also too just about water generally for ourselves. Hydration is really important to restore that sense of energy replenishment and restore the deeper organs and connective tissues, our joints, our skin, all those things, to just form this foundational health to sort of set us up right for when we are more energetically taxed. And winter can be a really drying time too, even though there's this whole watery energy outside. We've got the wood stove, or heat in your house, the cold wind. It's just a time when it's very easy for us to dry out. So thinking like the land, replenishing our hydration is really important. So, and I also want to talk a little bit about immunity here tonight, because I think that that's relevant to the season and then also relevant to the times. But hydration is really at the very foundation of immunity as well. So all of our different first layers of defense in the body, so our mucosal membranes that line our upper respiratory tract, our lungs, so the lower respiratory tract, our GI tract, and then our skin also. All of these things, they sort of form our boundary layer to external infiltration from bacteria and viruses. Even like energetic infiltration too, I feel like is a thing that those first, they're like the most exposed parts of our of our body, they can't do their job as well as they should if they are dehydrated, if they're brittle and, compromised in some way. So really nourishing them just through hydration is a really great first step towards building immunity, and then just building sort of full body strength, because all of those different cell linings, I mean, they are the external, they're sort of like our mediators between the outside world, but they also make all those different systems function. So the respiratory system functions best when those mucosal endothelial tissues are supple and moist. Same with our GI tract, same with our skin. So, and for me as an herbalist, whenever I hear like water, it's a perfect opportunity to include herbs. So I think the most basic one that's a really great wintertime thing to consider is tea. So, we want to be drinking water, but turning it into an herbal tea gives it this added medicinal power. So we're hydrating, but then we're also getting some of these other added benefits of the plant medicine, and also promoting plant connection. It's dormant, it's dark outside, where a lot of us are probably more shut inside because of the pandemic, and then also just because it's colder, and taking herbs, using herbs internally and in your food and that kind of thing, just incorporating them into your life helps sort of promotes a little bit more of that plant and land connection that may feel like it's not as strong in the wintertime as normal. So I'm drinking tea. I'm going to take a sip of it. And so I wanted to talk about, I'm going to kind of talk about a couple little different practices, self-care, health practices, but then throw in some different herbs that can be used. And the first one I want to talk about, relevant to tea, is chamomile, which is what I'm drinking. This is chamomile and fennel, which is a combination that I've really been liking, and they're really accessible herbs. So chamomile is one of my favorite ones to talk about. I mean, it's so multifaceted, but chamomile it's really accessible. So most people have heard of chamomile tea. Most people have probably a box of old chamomile tea in their shelf, whether they're herbally inclined or not, or like their mother or their grandmother gave it to them when they were a kid. And I think that is a really powerful thing about herbal medicine too, especially something that's so common. What it really speaks to is how important and longstanding that plant medicine has been in people's cultures and histories for so long, that they thought it was so good enough at doing whatever its job was, to pass it down and bring the seeds over to a new country and plant it in the garden and continue to plant it in the garden. So sometimes I feel like chamomile gets written off because it's so ubiquitous and so common, but really it speaks to its like incredible power. And it's a really multifaceted herb. So obviously it's a delicious tea, and it just, maybe drinking tea helps. Sometimes in the cold, people are less inclined to drink water to stay hydrated, and making something tasty and warm helps. So that's sort of like the first medicine that it does. It's kind of floral and fruity if you've never had chamomile tea. And actually the name chamomile, I think it's derived from Greek, but it means ground apple. So the way that it grows is close to the ground and kind of crawling. It does grow up, but then it has this sweet smell that people say smells like apple, and it kind of has a fruity apple flavor to it. So that's where the name comes from. And it's a native plant in like Eastern Europe and Mediterranean, Northwest Asia, and was used traditionally in a lot of different cultures. Maybe like the oldest written is like Greek and Egyptian. And it's called German chamomile by many because it was supposedly probably brought over by lots of different people, but brought to North America by German settlers who couldn't live without it and brought it to plant in their gardens. But so chamomile it's great, it's ubiquitous, but it's an amazing digestive support plant. It's really anti-inflammatory, it's very soothing, but it's also really relaxing to the nervous system. So some people think of it as a sleep plant medicine. It doesn't actually make you drowsy, so you can drink it at any time of day, but it's really relaxing to, the mind, the muscles, so that if you are actually tired, and it just eases you, into sleep. So that's why it's often associated with going to sleep. But I will just drink it, to calm me in the day, or to calm my digestive system. It's great for digestive upset or indigestion symptoms of any kind, and helps kind of facilitate that process and relieve bloating and gas and any kind of thing that, basically any kind of digestive issue. If you have chamomile on your shelf, it's a great thing to kind of throw at it and see if it helps, which it normally will. So so chamomile is great for that. There's actually two types of chamomile. That German one is the more common, and that's really the one that I'm talking about. They have like a little bit different of uses. The other one is Roman chamomile, but they're different plants, although pretty similar and related. I also really like chamomile in the bathtub. So that's another kind of watery medicine area that for me, as an herbalist, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of water in there, put herbs in there. So maybe you've done this before. You can just make like a little tea bag in like a muslin bag to add to your bathtub. And then you get a little bit of the medicine in there because, it disperses. That's a lot of water. But another great way to add herbs to your bath as like a nice, it's self-care. It's a little bit luxurious, but it's also this can be a really healing space. We're also breathing in the steam from the bath, so that can open our breathing pathways if we're sick, or just, moistening all those different mucous membranes that I was talking about that line the respiratory tract. The bath is a great place to do that. And then it can also be this place where, if you have physical achiness and pains, a great place to soak and use some herbs. So a lot of people know about putting Epsom salt in the bath for helping relax sore muscles, but you could just add herbs too. And the best way that I found to do that with like more strength than just like a little muslin tea bag is to just brew a big pot of herbs on the stove beforehand and add it to the bath. And it still gets dispersed, but it'll be a lot stronger than just, doing a small little tea bag in the tub. And chamomile is a really great one because, we absorb a lot into our bloodstream through our skin and with water as well. So you're absorbing some of that anti-inflammatory, relaxing parts of chamomile. So it can even be going to your digestive tract. Like if you don't particularly love to drink tea, or you don't like the flavor of chamomile, but you don't mind the way that it smells, because it really does have a nice like fruity smell to it. You can just take a bath and you'd still be absorbing that medicine into you and getting some of that anti-inflammatory quality. So, just relaxing. And then I do want to share, hopefully, a little bit about sleep too. And that can be a great way to kind of create a little bit of a sleep routine to kind of transition out of the day into night, to take like a relaxing bath. You could drink chamomile tea in the bath while you're taking the bath, just to get some of that, more restful energy. But there's an herbalist, an old European herbalist, who's one of the kind of like forefathers of Western herbalism, which typically means sort of like white North American and European modern herbalism, rather than, like who else could be Western herbalists, are like the Native American people. But when you say Western herbalism, that typically means white people of European ancestry. But so this is a European herbalist, Nicholas Culpeper, who has a great sort of foundational herbal text. But I'm just going to read a quote. he says, the bathing with a decoction of chamomile takes away weariness, eases pains to what part of the body soever they be applied. So chamomile is just a great one. Another great tea that is really good in winter because it's really nourishing and nutritive. And so we're talking about restoring our energetic reserves. So nutrition is a great way to do that. But it's also a great herb as we sort of shift into springtime, because springtime is kind of this time when our body starts getting like jump started and we want to cleanse a little bit more. So this herb is both nutritive and building, but also cleansing and stimulating. So it's this great like transitional time period plant medicine. Is nettles. So that's another one that I feel like people know, and it's a little bit more readily available than some of the more obscure plant medicines. So nettles make a great tea. Fresh in the springtime, if you have access to them. Now we would just have dried. You could eat them too, but I wouldn't recommend eating the dried, even if you rehydrated the dried nettles. It's not as good as when they're fresh for eating. But nettles, you can make tea with it. It's less like fruity and floral and more kind of vegetal, and you feel like you're a little more savory, I suppose, is like how I would describe the flavor. But delicious too, and turns like a really nice green color. Nettles are really high in nutrition, high in calcium, iron, B vitamins, vitamin C, and then they are an amazing urinary tract tonic. So that's part of one of its facets, that it helps the body cleanse and kind of clear the blood. And urination is obviously a way that we detoxify. And then just building the blood and helping support the lymph system so that everything just cleanses out of us more easily. That's sort of mostly when I talk about cleanses for using herbs. It's not kind of the typical juice fast smoothie kind of thing. In fact, those are things I don't recommend, especially during winter. Mostly what we want to be doing in winter is building up our nutrition, and then in spring just helping stimulate and support our natural detoxification processes. So supporting the liver and supporting the lymph so that they can do the cleansing for us, adjusting our diet so that we're eating healthfully and not a lot of sugar and that kind of thing is great for that kind of cleanse too. But really like nutrient building, supporting our body with lots of nutrients is really important. So nettles is really great because they're so nutrient dense. And nettles, definitely not a great bath medicine, but a different way that you could use nettles during this time that adds to their nutritive quality would be adding them to a broth. So I like to make bone broth, animal bone broth, but you can make vegetarian broths too with vegetables. And then, with bone broth it's really high nutrients as well, protein, and there's collagen and glycine and all sorts of minerals and vitamins added that's extra from the bones from those different meat cuts. And that gets leached into the water that you're cooking your bones in for a while. But if you add something like nettles, you're getting, and especially if you're adding nettles to like a vegetarian broth, it'll add a lot of those extra nutrients, iron, that calcium, to make it just even more nutritive. Just as I said, because we're really talking about winter time as this time to restore energy, and building our nutrition foundation is great, because in the summertime we eat and we can eat very healthfully, lots of nutrition in vegetables, but everything's just like a little bit lighter, and you can kind of make do with like fruits and salads and fresh vegetables. And that's really the time when that's appropriate. And winter is not necessarily heavy food, but hearty food that's really going to be like supporting you and supporting, nourishing all those different things that I was talking about. So nourishing all of our cells and our organs, our connective tissue. And that's sort of a little bit more like that. The water replenishing is for us, it's water, hydration, but also the nutrients replenishing all of those all those cells and parts of ourselves. So nettles, great in tea and soup. And they're, yeah, again, they're pretty accessible to purchase from various herbalists this time of year, just because they're so common. Or maybe you have your own sort of stash of dried herbs. So another really important thing, and I kind of talked about this with the hydration part, but that I definitely want to talk about here tonight, because as I said, immunity is sort of important on multiple levels this year, this winter. So we want to be, in winter, we want to be building our immunity, supporting our immune system normally, just because this is the natural cold and flu season. It's the natural time when our defenses get a little bit low because we're all spending more time inside. Bacteria and viruses pass just a little bit more easily. And then this year, I feel like that's extra at hand because of the pandemic, and people want to know how to kind of naturally support themselves through this. I mean, I think we've all been wanting to do this all year long, but it's especially important now as we are amidst just regular cold and flu season. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple different herbs that are, again, accessible and that you may have heard of, to just sort of boost them up as things to support us. And again, drinking tea, keeping yourself hydrated, giving yourself lots of good healthy nutrition, those are foundational to good strong immunity anyway. So those things are part of keeping that immune system strong and thriving for the whole year. But there's a few other things that you can kind of throw in there to add that are extra, immune system specific. So one of those that I want to talk about is elderberry, which is relatively common. And a lot of people know because elderberry syrup is delicious and common. And again, easy to find out there in the world to purchase or make yourself. So you can make it with fresh elderberries. Now they would be like frozen if you had them frozen, or you can buy them dried. And essentially when you're making an herbal syrup, you're making a tea, a really strong tea, and then you're preserving it with honey, and maybe some people add a little bit of alcohol, but if you add the alcohol, it's more shelf stable. But I tend to just do it with honey. So it's like half the strong tea that you've cooked on the stove and then half honey. So it mixes together and makes a nice syrup. And the honey does preserve it a little bit, but you have to keep it in the refrigerator. So that's like delicious. That's just like berry water and honey. So it's really sweet. So you don't take too much of it, but it's great for children, not babies, but younger children, and great for people who maybe aren't familiar with herbs or don't typically like the flavor of certain herbs. A lot of herbs are quite bitter. None of the ones that we're talking about mostly pretty delicious ones: chamomile, nettles, elderberry. But elderberry syrup is a great one for someone that maybe is a little more skeptical because it tastes so good. And you can put it on your yogurt, you can put it in your water, you can add it to tea, you can do all sorts of things with it as a syrup. But so elderberry is, first and foremost, it's an antioxidant, much like any other of the like rich dark berries that we know of. So what an antioxidant is something that helps prevent but also restore from oxidative damage in the body. So that's basically just like stress damage. And that can happen from all sorts of things, from just our own stress. It can happen from external stressors, from just being sick. So elderberry ultimately is really restorative and preventative for any kind of systemic damage that's happening to us and stress. But what what makes it such a great cold and flu remedy, and then, particular with viruses, is that it's antiviral and like antibacterial, mildly antibacterial, but it's very antiviral. And it's antiviral on its own, but then another component of what it helps do is it helps promote our body's own production of its own antibodies. So it essentially helps just boost our own immune system. So it fights off the virus on its own, but then it helps us strengthen from within to fight it off ourselves. So it's like this extra powerful cold and flu medicine, and it tastes great. And then another component of why it's so good is it's anti-inflammatory and really soothing. So if you have a sore throat, or even chest congestion that's really tight and sort of painful, it can be very soothing to those inflamed, kind of a little bit like decimated mucous membranes that are happening, and also it can help, if there's congestion, kind of break up some of that mucus and help get it out and make the cough more productive. So it's all around just like a great remedy to have, especially because it's so tasty, and so many people can take it, from children to grandparents. Yeah, and I think that part about helping us produce our own antibodies is something that feels really powerful about elderberries. Okay, so I want to make sure that I have time to answer questions at the end. But so one thing I really like to talk about as an herbalist, especially in kind of more foundational classes, is using, I think, and I touched on it really with the chamomile, where I was talking about, how things are so ubiquitous that really speaks to its power. I really like talking about like kitchen medicine and kitchen herbs. So the things that we have on hand anyway, just because they're so ingrained into our culinary cultures. And they are so ingrained into our culinary cultures because of their power. So I think that really speaks to, again, like chamomile, how important it was and how important it is that it's just become so normal to add cinnamon to something, or to add cumin or coriander to a dish. And that, those things all help with digestion and getting things moving. And so they are medicine, but they are also just spices that we know of. And, kind of breaking down that wall is really powerful, so that people realize, oh, like I already am an herbalist. I do this all the time. So then the next plant that I wanted to talk about, that I'm sure everyone has and everyone probably uses, unless maybe you just don't like the flavor, but that's garlic. So garlic is an incredible and a very versatile I guess it's a vegetable, root, whatever it is. It's a root, I guess. And onions really can go together with garlic, but I definitely think of garlic as being the really powerful medicine. Particularly garlic is really great for the heart. So garlic helps, it's warming, so it's pretty stimulating. So it can help kind of like blood flow going and circulation. So it's great for any kind of stagnation in that, but it's really supportive to the circulatory system. It also just helps support blood glucose levels, but also blood pressure. So it's protective to the heart. It's cardioprotective, and it's that warmth and that stimulation that it does is it helps open blood vessels. So it's vasodilating is the word that I would use for that. Can help with any kind of constriction and just improve circulation and flow generally. And then all the while it's, this amazing food that we like to eat, and adds a whole lot of rich flavor to everything. So garlic is great for that. And it's so, especially if heart health is important, which it is for all of us, it's definitely a great, just supportive thing to be including in our diets, knowing, oh, this is great for my heart. So, more garlic. But garlic and onions are also very antibacterial and warming in that kind of way. So they're warming and stimulating and can help with immunity as well. So I like to add garlic to tea sometimes, like a lemon garlic tea, but sometimes that can be strong. Some people chop up raw garlic and eat a little bit of raw garlic. But the best way that I know to use garlic as medicine, well, you could mix garlic with honey and eat it like that, which some people like. But the best way is a little remedy called fire cider, which is what most people call it, which is mostly apple cider vinegar and a little bit of honey. You can increase the honey based on your taste if you prefer it to be sweeter or prefer it to be more vinegary. But garlic is essentially the base of fire cider for pretty much however anyone makes it. And then people add various things to their fire cider to add flavor and to add other medicinal pieces to it. So some people will add onion. Onion adds a strong, garlic is strong, but onion adds like a very strong flavor to it, I think. So some people don't. I don't really add onion to my fire cider, but some people do, or like shallots or something like that. What I tend to always add are hot peppers. So hot peppers are just really opening and stimulating too. I mean, they make your nose run whether you want it to or not. So that can just open the sinuses and help with that. And the spiciness is in itself antibacterial as well. So fire cider is like just this little like burst of it's like a blast of fighting energy that you give yourself. So a few hot peppers, cayenne is like a pretty good one. If you have dried peppers, you can add them this time of year if you are making it. But if you have access to, get some fresh peppers, hot peppers at the store. Jalapenos actually make a great hot pepper for a fire cider. You could also add elderberry into your fire cider instead of making a syrup. So then you'd have more of a vinegary elderberry mixture. And you can use your fire cider as like part of your salad dressing because it's a little more savory. Another classic ingredient people like to add is horseradish. So just again, another really like stimulating kind of spicy, fiery energy blaster. So just thinking about fire cider, it's to, you can take it preventatively to help sort of boost immunity and fight bacteria, but it's definitely great when you've already started to feel that little tingle of like, oh, I'm getting sick. I want to kind of like fight it off a little bit. And then, if you've started to feel congested, to help sort of blast that out of you and open yourself up a little bit more because of that warmth and that stimulation. Yeah, and some other things you could add to a fire cider. Hibiscus is a good one. It makes it a nice pink color. Any kind of fruit or berry that's like an antioxidant, they're all really supportive to the immune system and they're all flavorful. So you could add blueberries, you could add pomegranates, blackberries, so all manner of things. You could put whatever you want in it, pretty much. You could add nettles, you could add chamomile, you could add root medicines. I've added rosemary and thyme and sage to it. Sage is a great respiratory herb as well and a common kitchen herb. So those are all great ones to add to a fire cider. So that's a really easy remedy to either purchase or make yourself. And fun, it's always fun to experiment with making medicine. So I think I'm just going to share one little bit more and then take some time to answer questions. I think people have been posting some stuff in the chat box too. So immunity, that was that, some herbs for immunity. And then I want to talk just a little bit about sleep because, I'm sort of talking about like very simple things that probably all of us know of as foundational health supportive things, hydration, immunity, sleep. But it's nice to kind of be reminded of them as really powerful healers and great ways to kind of use this particular season to regenerate and restore so that we set off into the rest of the year with really great foundational health. And there's probably nothing better than sleep to just, build foundational health. Sleep is rest. Sleep is the foundation of rest, but it's actually not that easy to come by. I think, like what I said at the beginning about living in a culture that wants us to kind of keep pace. We definitely live in a society that glorifies the really hard worker who doesn't ever rest, and that can really infiltrate our sleep habits. So I like to talk about sleep and how we should look at it as thinking about how we look at sleep for young children. So I feel like we tend to be so gracious about sleep with children, and we're like, the more sleep, the better. We want them to nap multiple times a day. We want them to sleep 10 hours. We notice when their sleep habits are off, and we say like, oh, they're grumpy because they didn't have their nap today, or they were up all night, and that's why they're like really tired today or not functioning as well. And then we just don't have the same kind of generosity with ourselves and with adults around sleep. We sort of are like, oh, I can just catch up later, and we expect ourselves to just be able to like keep going and also be in a great mood about it. But we're just like children. Children are humans. We're humans, and having a little bit more of that generosity about sleep is important, especially in winter. So it's a natural inclination in winter to get more tired, to be more tired, because it is this time when our bodies are naturally saying like, I'd like to restore a little bit more, so that in the summer when it's sunny out at 9 p.m., I'm still out in the garden, or I'm still hosting friends over for dinner. And in the winter, it's dark at 4:30 p.m. So it's like, okay, now's the time for me to get my cup of tea, take a bath, and go to bed. So that's, I feel like, at the root of, this kind of like sleep routine and sleep health. But I do want to share at least one herb. Yeah, I'll just share this one herb about that's really helpful for sleep. It's one of my favorites. And maybe one that's less common that people would not know of, but I think it's a really great one. And that's ashwagandha. So ashwagandha is it's an Ayurvedic medicine and a traditional Chinese medicine. And it's considered an adaptogen. So that's a class of herbs that basically help us adapt to stress and change and all sorts of things, and help our bodies maintain pretty much holistic balance. But they all do have particular affinities for different systems. And ashwagandha has a real affinity just for like the adrenals and our energy. And it's really nourishing. It's really tasty. It's kind of sweet. It's the root of a plant, and it's actually related to tomatoes and peppers. So it's in the Solanaceae family. And it's this sweet, almost nutty root. And you can take it, you can drink it as tea. You could take it as a tincture. So that's the alcohol extract of it. Or what I like to do, and what a lot of people do, because it's really available like this, is in powder form. And you can take things as powders, like in capsules, but I love powders as a way to make sort of a different type of tea, where you'd like mix it with milk and honey or maple syrup, and make it more like a sweet beverage, because it's so tasty like that. So it's all like making hot chocolate, but with this herb. So that's my favorite way to take this plant medicine. And ashwagandha is just really restoring to deep energy. And when sleeplessness and insomnia and real burnt out tiredness is upon us, that can often be it can inhibit healthful, restful sleep. So sometimes you're so tired that you're like really wired instead, or you're just not deeply resting when you are lying down. You're still kind of like in your dreams making to-do lists and that kind of thing. So ashwagandha can be really helpful for that. So again, it's not like a drowsying plant medicine. So it's not going to like put you to sleep like a sleep drug. but just sort of help balance and support your capacity to sleep, and then help you restore some of that really deep energy that gives you the power to make it through the day, and be cognitively there, and emotionally there, not like moody and those things that we probably all know well about what happens when we don't get enough real rest. So that can be a really great supportive plant for doing that, and for sort of like turning away from stress and still being able to get some of that really grounding sleep. And not necessarily excessive sleep, but sleep that fits into our daily life, into our daily routine. So yeah, so that's ashwagandha. That's some different herbs. I think now probably would be a good time to answer questions. How should we do this? So,
Do you want me to read some from the chat?
sure, yeah. And then I guess if anyone wants to
Raise their hand.
raise their hand and ask the question themselves, there's like the little reactions, and you can do the little, or you can just raise your hand if you're on the video. But there's like, if you press the reactions thing at the bottom, there's like a hand that like pokes
Kind of hand.
a hand.
Okay, while we're waiting for the hands, one question from Sandy: if you don't have a bath, you have a shower. Is there any way of getting the benefit of a chamomile bath in a shower?
Oh, that's a great question. Not in the same way with the shower, but showers are great for the steam. So you could kind of you could still turn your shower into like a really beautiful healing space with steam. Showers, I'm not much of a essential oil user, but shower would be more of a place where if you had like a nice essential oil, there's one I really like. It's a Swiss blend called Olbas oil, Olbas. And it's a mix of these really opening, I actually don't know what's in it, but it's almost like eucalyptus-y, where it's like really opening it. You can like splash that on the walls of the shower and get some of that steam. But if you don't have a bathtub, foot baths are a great way to do some of that too, to get to soak in that chamomile. Just get like a little smaller tub and do exactly the same thing with the chamomile or any kind of herb in the foot bath, and just the feet carry the weight of everything. So it's a great way to do that instead.
Great. And then a couple more questions about the chamomile. One is, if you wanted to get lots for the bath, like, do you just put in tea bags, or do you buy in bulk, or how do you?
Oh yeah, you can buy in bulk. There's a few good places to buy chamomile, like dried, but in like, you could buy like a 1 pound bag, which is a lot of chamomile. There's a classic place people buy from is called Mountain Rose. But then there's a few more local places. I like a farm in Pennsylvania called Tooth of the Lion. They sell bulk herbs. So yeah, so you're buying it in bulk, and then if you are brewing like a big pot of tea, putting it in the water and then straining out the chamomile so that you just had the tea to add to the bath.
Oh.
So unless you like having like little bits floating around, which is fine too.
And then for your chamomile and fennel tea, was it fennel leaves or fennel seeds in there?
Fennel seeds in this one, but fennel leaves would be good too. But fennel seeds.
And I think oh wait, we had another about garlic. Beneficial aspects of garlic. Do they change if the garlic is cooked or if the garlic is black garlic?
Wait, what was the last bit? If it's black?
Black garlic?
Oh, I don't know anything about black garlic.
Susie might know more about. Oh, she has her hand up.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Black garlic is using the Maillard reaction, which is like, it turns into this sugary, like black garlic over, like if you put it in a slow cooker for 2 weeks, and you wrap it in, I don't know, some oil or something, but it's delicious.
I'm sure it has some benefits, but I don't know anything about it. So I don't know about black garlic. But um, there are some nuances to the benefits of garlic. I'd say the more antibacterial, stimulating, warming component is in the raw garlic, like if you were using it for like a cold medicine.
Mhm.
But I think it's the heart medicine, like its support, cardio support, is still pretty present in like cooked garlic and roasted garlic. Um, and then, and obviously that makes it a little bit more palatable for a lot of people too.
Right. And then it looks like Marion has her hand up. I mistook Marion. You have to take your unmute mic.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted to say that I feel like for me, the herb thing has always been complicated. Like there's so many and what do I do with them all? And just the way you presented it, I feel what a great way to spend an hour and find out about these basic things. I'm ready to go get my teas and it just sounds great. Thank you. It's so easy.
It's so easy. I think there are a lot, we go to a class and then people are telling you all sorts of plants that you don't have access to either. So I thought it would be helpful, especially in just a short period of time, to go over some ones that are like
And
pretty common.
the elderberry syrup, you make the tea and then did you say how much honey you put in? I missed how you make it.
Okay, so yeah, so the way you would do it is, let's say you have dried elderberries. So let's say you do like a half a cup of dried elderberries. And then maybe you'd put 2 cups of water over that in a pot and simmer that so bring it up to a boil and then let it simmer on the stove with the top off so that the water is evaporating.
Okay.
So it's becoming a really strong tea. And then you want it to go down by about half the water. So it's really strong. And then you want to add equal parts honey to your tea. So let's say you end up with, I think I'm doing this right. That's probably a really strong tea, half a cup to 2 cups, but let's just say that's what it is. You can look up recipes really easily on.
Okay. All right.
But then, you'd have like a cup of the strong elderberry tea at the end. You'd strain out the elderberries you used and mix it with equal parts honey. So you'd have a cup of honey and a cup of the tea. And then you would mix it until it's well mixed, so that it's not like separating. And then you would have it. So it'd just be equal parts.
Great.
You can make it with other things too, like if you wanted to add fennel seeds or echinacea, which is another great immune support herb. You can do that in an elderberry syrup as well. It doesn't just have to be elderberry.
Okay. Thank you. Great.
Another question about garlic. Someone has tried to make garlic honey recently, but the honey got bubbly. Is that normal?
Oh, that probably has to do with just like the liquid. That tends to happen if you make like herbal honeys with fresh things. The whatever amount of water is in the plant kind of the honey, and honey is it very quickly can ferment a little bit. It's perfectly safe, as long as it's not like moldy on the top. But storing it in the refrigerator, straining out the plant matter helps. Like with garlic, you probably want the garlic in it. Storing in the refrigerator helps slow that process. But I wouldn't be too worried about it with the garlic too, because garlic is so antibacterial that I don't think mold could grow on a garlic honey.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
Thank you. Are there any other raised hands? Let's see. I don't think so.
Do you have a question?
I do. You mentioned echinacea, in the elderberry syrup. Would you use the seeds or the flowers or the leaves of echinacea?
Typically the roots that are used. Okay. So all the parts are medicinal. When they're fresh, the flowers and the leaves. Some people probably dry them to store those parts, but the root is the really medicinal, you know, immune supportive, antiviral part of the echinacea plant. But it's like the native pink purpurea species. So a lot of people just grow that in their gardens because it's great for pollinators and it's beautiful. So, you know, you could go to your garden and dig up an echinacea root right now. So if the ground's not good, and use that. So it's another really accessible one.
I did dig up my echinacea, and it, you know, online I see these big, you know, hardy roots, but mine are like, you know, small, fibery. You know, they're not thick like dandelion roots.
Yeah.
Mean they're too young, or?
Well, people do say that give it 3 years of life before you dig it up. So probably the bigger ones you're seeing are older.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's still as good. You're just getting less root for your one plant that you dug.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is that it? Any other queries?
Oh, that's.
Do we have your contact info if we wanted to know where you are and wanted to get in touch with you in the future? Like,
That is coming up.
I think so. I think that there's.
okay, I didn't see it, so that's fine. It's
But,
maybe.
oh yes, so it's in the chat box now. So yeah, so I have a website.
Oh, there it is. Thanks. I see it. Okay.
Yeah, I have a website, and then I have like this online learning space, which is the second website, the Patreon, which you can just kind of learn cumulatively from me month to month on that space. And but then I also teach like one-off classes, like Zoom classes and that kind of thing. But you can find out all of that stuff on my website, and I have a newsletter as well. That's a really great way to find out all the things that I'm doing and sharing.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you to the backyard table, everyone, for having me.